Welcome to yet another episode of the Speak Real podcast, where we share one-on-one conversations with our youth speakers, and they share their stories and some of the experiences that they went through along their journey. Um, we also believe that sharing stories and storytelling is the best way to empower youth and give them a platform to share their voices and to find their voices. So today we'll be speaking with Michael, one of our youth facilitators, as well as by day fitness enthusiast and by night salsa dancer extraordinaire. So hey, welcome, Michael. Thanks for being here.
Hey, that was awesome. Of course, I'm so happy to be here. I'm actually so excited. I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
Good, yes, me too, definitely. So why don't we just get right into it? We'll be talking to Michael today about his story, a bit about some of the things that he struggled with along his journey with mental health and his wellness, as well as how he's doing with COVID and how's that affecting him today. So we'll get right into the first question. I'm going to ask you, Michael, tell us a bit about your childhood and what it was like for you growing up.
Sure. I grew up in an Italian family, a traditional Italian family. I had both my parents growing up, and I was a happy kid. And I went to school. I was okay. I had a happy childhood. For me, my mental health challenges actually started in high school. And things slowly started to change for me. And that's when I was diagnosed with high functioning depression. And that basically means that on the outside, the high functioning part means that I was doing everything that you would expect someone to be doing that didn't struggle with mental health. So I was exercising, went to school, did my homework, tried to be social with friends, but on the inside, I was completely different. And it was like the complete opposite. And I didn't feel, I felt, I felt really bad. I felt really heavy all the time, really sad. And I didn't really know how to explain it.
Yeah, no, I can definitely relate with that. I know that for me, a lot of my trouble started in high school, and it's so unfortunate. But I want to ask you, when did you first notice, or what were the first signs that you noticed that you were struggling?
Um, that's a really good question. One of the first signs for me probably was a lack of motivation. I It would be very hard to find something that I enjoyed. It was really hard to find the motivation to do things. And I remember one of the first really big signs like, oh, like something's going on, is I didn't really feel like trying very hard at school. My grades started to slip a little bit. And I just I I lost that push kind of to keep trying. It was really hard to find something to be excited about, and that will go on for a long time. And you know what? It made me really sad after a little while.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a lot to deal with, especially in high school with all the pressures of school and noticing that you're struggling with the mental health. That's
Hmm.
like the first part, noticing. So what did you do once you did notice, once you found out that you were struggling? What were the first steps in sort of in getting help?
Well, okay, so this was middle of high school, and to be honest, I didn't really do much. I kind of just tried to figure it out on my own. And, you know, at the time too, this was all so new to me. I didn't really even understand what I was going on. And I don't even think I knew that I was struggling with my mental health. I think, I just looked at it as something that I was dealing with and that I'll figure out or that I'll, learn to live with. But then towards the end of high school, towards my first 2 3 years of university, it still kind of stuck around, right? And then finally I reached out for help. after my first few years of university. So it was a long time before I actually reached out and I did something about it.
Yeah. And sometimes it takes a long time to find that strength to sort of reach out. And I definitely can relate. I guess I want to ask you, what was sort of the biggest challenge that you went through when you were struggling? What was one of the biggest challenges that you went through?
My biggest challenge was believing that I was going to be okay because, you know, logically, we can say, yeah, you know what, everything will get worked out. And when someone's upset about something, we all intuitively want to say, it's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. But for me, when I was really feeling the effects of my mental health, when I would get into, one of those periods of depression, it's like I couldn't see that. Sometimes I really couldn't see a way out. And even though, you know, that I had some support and people were telling me that I was going to be okay, I didn't believe it because at the time, all I knew was the depression I was feeling. I didn't know what it was going to be like to be okay, and I couldn't see myself getting to that. And it's which is one of the things that makes mental health so difficult, is because it's not really a clear formula, right? Where it's like, you have a headache, take an Advil. It doesn't really work like that. It's a super long process, and it's a lot of trial and error as you go. So that was probably the hardest thing, is believing that I was going to be okay, especially when I was really struggling.
Absolutely, for sure. I definitely resonate. I like what you said, that mental health is a process,
Hmm.
definitely a lifelong journey for anybody who struggles with anything with their mental health. It's not just a one fix, a cup of tea, or a one talk speaking to a psychiatrist or a therapist. It's a lifelong journey, and we all have to take the time to put in those coping skills and find the skills of how to help our mental health, and how to cope when we're going through these difficult situations. So I want to ask you, what was something that you did to overcome all of these mental health challenges?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's a few things that I'm currently doing. And at the time that we're recording this, we're just coming out of COVID quarantine, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But right at the beginning, when I first was diagnosed, when I was first trying to find ways to cope with it, um, first of all, I went to go seek professional help. And I want to talk a little bit more about that. But right off the bat, I just paid a visit to my family doctor. She got me connected with someone that I can talk to. And I used to go on YouTube a lot. YouTube used to really help me, and I used to just search something as simple as depression motivation, something to get me through my day. That was really helpful. Netflix really helped me too at the beginning because, at least for that 45 minutes or that hour that I was watching a show, my brain was focused on something else other than whatever I was going through, other than dwelling on how sad I was. And then the other thing that really helped was trying to be with friends as much as I could, even though I didn't really want to sometimes. Um, Even though you want to kind of come back a little bit, hang out by yourself, you also have to realize that it's not going to be helpful, right? So even though like I didn't want to, I tried to get out as much as I could, tried to stay healthy, tried to exercise, um, which are all little pieces to the puzzle, I think.
Definitely. And it's just like you said, little pieces to the puzzle is about taking the little tiny steps that, that are going to help us. Just a little one step at a time, right?
Exactly.
So you talked about COVID and how that was affecting you. Can you speak a little bit of how was in the beginning, how your mental state or your mental wellness was in the beginning versus how it is in the end, and how did COVID affect you basically?
Yeah, sure. Um, you know what? I really want to talk about it because I think a lot of people can relate. So anyways, at the beginning of COVID, I was doing okay, actually. I'm a little bit of an introvert by nature, which doesn't mean I like to hang out at home by myself all the time. It just means, I can appreciate my alone time. So I was actually doing pretty well at the time. I was finishing off my semester of school. I had other things going on. And then slowly, some things started to change. A couple things were happening in my life that didn't make me feel so good, that made me feel a little bit of pain, made me a little sad. And as we went through COVID, I kind of just sat with those feelings. And then there was one point not too long ago where a few things kind of happened in my life and which were really big triggers for me and just set me down pretty quick. And I think I can say that it was the hardest period in terms of my mental health, the hardest thing in my life that I've ever had to go through. Um, I I remember feeling completely hopeless. I felt like giving up. I couldn't see a way out, and it was super tough because now the whole thing about COVID. I'm a pretty active person. I go out, like you said in your intro. There's always stuff I'm involved with, and when I was having that really rough time, I couldn't go out and do any of that stuff that I would normally do. All right. At the time I couldn't go to the gym, participate in the hobbies I like to do, which made it worse. And I tend to be a thinker. So at night I would stay up thinking, and so I wasn't sleeping either. So all those things made it worse, and it was hard. It was really really hard for me.
Yeah, you know what? I for sure I feel like a lot of us can relate with that COVID. With anybody who had mental health struggles before, existing mental health struggles before, COVID kind of put those under a microscope
Hmm.
or a magnifying glass. And now I feel like, yeah, just like what you said, everything that we were kind of struggling with before, all the things that we could have done to sort of help ourselves through that, the coping mechanisms that we've come to learn up to this point, we could no longer do. And I feel like that's why COVID has been such a struggle for everyone. So I'm going to ask you now, what are some things, now that COVID has been a part of our lives for so long, what are some things that what are some creative ways that you're finding to make yourself feel better during these COVID times?
Yeah, that's a really good question because you know, even though I went through the hardest thing I've ever had to go through, I also knew that I didn't want to feel like that, right? So The first thing I did was I reached out for help. And let me be 100% honest. And this was from advice that I got from my uncle. And you know, he's a businessman, and you know, he says that when you're dealt with a roadblock, you gotta first identify the problem, and second, find the best team you can to help you solve that problem. So first of all, right, I definitely agree with that. So like you can't begin to address the problem unless you know what to address. So I obviously knew what I was going through. So that brings me to the next part, right? The people that I chose to kind of help me through that. And I want to break this stereotype a little bit, the stereotype of therapy and professional help. So let me tell you that it was so hard for me that I was feeling a little desperate. I knew I wanted help. I knew that wasn't this wasn't, you know, um, this wasn't going to last forever. And I knew there was people to help me through it. So I have a great therapist that I talk to on a regular basis. I have a psychiatrist. I consulted a naturopath. I am even working with a mindfulness coach right now. And let me tell you, when I think of the best team, like the team I have is pretty good. And you know, some people might think, oh my gosh, like he actually has all those people. Like, wow, he must really need help. To be honest, it's not even about that. It's just for me personally, the type of person I am, I can't sit and think, you know what, that thing could have probably helped, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to reach out to that person. It's like, no, like I don't want to, you know, I don't want to live like this. I know there's something better. And if there's help somewhere out there, I'm going to do everything I can to get it. So those are all the people that I seek professional help from. And on top of that, family. I reached out to my family and a few of my really close friends, which was honestly really hard for me. Even though people in my family knew what, you know, my mental health history and what I've struggled with in the past, um, I'm I'm still a pretty private person. I was kind of going through it on my own, dealing with it on my own. And so for me to open up and say, you know what, I'm really struggling, like I need some extra support, that was big. That was really hard for me. And and I think I think at some point I had to realize, you know what, like I'm going through a really rough patch right now. Not only and that was the other thing. I was diagnosed with depression, but this period of my life, this really hard part that I recently went through, I started to experience some anxiety too. So now I'm dealing with anxiety, which I never really dealt with before. You know, I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. Let me tell you, anxiety sucks. It's horrible. Like so, like it's the worst. It's like it was debilitating.
Yeah.
So at some point, I had to realize, you know what, like this is hard, and even though I want to, I can't really do it on my own, and that's okay. You know, like I can't beat myself up for that, right? And so I reached out to my family, and I have to say that people who know me know that I'm an emotional person. I'm a sensitive guy, but I don't really get worked up about a lot of things. But honestly, when I think about like the family and like all the people I have that support me and have my back, like kind of gets me a little choked up because it really sorry, it really reminds me that even people that I don't talk to on a regular basis, or that I wouldn't expect, like they're always there for me. So that's a really important thing for everyone to realize, that there's always people there, but you got to reach out first. They can't read your mind.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, I'm like, oh, okay. I'm definitely getting a bit teary because I definitely know that support from family and how important that is and what it means, especially for someone who's struggling. It's
Hmm.
paramount. And I just love what your uncle said about identifying the problem and finding the best team to solve. It takes a whole village. You can't do anything by yourself. It always takes a team to do anything. So just like what Michael said, reaching out to those people, even though we are going through COVID times and we do have to keep in mind social distancing, we can still have a phone call, and
Absolutely.
it takes a lot of strength to admit that you're struggling and then share that with people. But honestly, sometimes the hardest thing standing in our way is the best thing to do for ourselves. So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so support's really important, but I want to throw in like a few like practical things that you can physically do to help, that have honestly, like, I'm not just saying this, that I have literally done, and that has helped me get through the worst of it. It hasn't gone away, so right, it usually never does, but these things kind of help me get maybe 1% better every day, which is a blessing, right? So first of all, really good advice that someone gave me. You have to make a schedule for yourself. You won't want to do it, especially, trust me, I know, on my worst days, I don't want to go anywhere, see anyone, do anything, just stay in bed. Sometimes it's hard to even get out of bed, but staying in bed isn't going to be helpful. So even though you don't want to do it, you got to make a schedule for yourself and stick to it. If you need help, get someone to help you drag your butt out of bed, right? And make sure that schedule is filled with things that are going to help you. You may not feel better right away. You're not going to want to do it, but positive things. Um, and some people say, and even I said this at first, but I'm not going to want to. I'm not going to be motivated. And you know what? You're right. You're not going to be motivated. Problem is, we might want to wait for the motivation. Like, I'll do it when I feel like it. You're not going to feel like it. You got to do it first, and then slowly, as things get better, then you'll feel like doing it. So one of those things that you should do, that honestly I say to everyone every single day, is get outside and get some exercise. That's something that I've been doing every single day. And for me, I feel the best when I get some exercise in the morning, first thing, to start my day off on a good note. So I have literally set my alarm for 6:30 a.m. every morning. I'm at the gym for 7:30. Even though some days I don't want to do it, I'll go to the gym. Like yesterday, got up, went to the gym, and I did a little bit of weights, right? And for me, that's what getting active means. Get outside. Every evening I try and take my dog for a walk. That's the other thing, right? Some people might say, "Oh, well, that's easy for you. You're obviously a fit guy, you go to the gym." I would say, you know what? It doesn't matter. Do whatever exercise means for you. If that means going outside, walking a few houses down and back, maybe you do that a few times a day. That's perfect. That's awesome, right? But you have to exercise. We know that exercise makes our body feel good, which also makes our mind feel good.
sure. I like what you said about everybody finding their own regimen. Like, you go on long walks with your dog, and, some people that may not work. just take this 2 steps down, 2 blocks down, that's good enough. So it's all about finding what works for you ultimately, but definitely about getting your body moving, because it's a proven fact that it helps for sure. So thanks for sharing that. I'm going to ask you, or the last thing, or last few questions, and
Sure.
my last thing is, throughout your journey, you shared a lot about your mental health struggles and what you did to sort of overcome them. But I want to find out from you, what is the one best piece of advice that someone has ever shared with you throughout your entire journey? That one piece of advice that you'd like to share with others.
Hmm. That's a good question. I have, you know what? I can't decide between two, so I'm going to say them both. So, first off, this is a piece of advice that I heard a long time ago, 2 or 3 years ago, and I love it. And I say it all the time because I think, all right, I'm just going to say it. So, the advice is, you are not responsible for the unfortunate, sad, crappy things that happen to you in your life. You're not responsible for those unfortunate situations because they happen, right? You're not responsible for the mental health challenges that you find yourself in. However, you are responsible for what you do next. So you're responsible for what you do about it, the way you think about it, who you talk to about it. And you're responsible for doing that for you, because you have so much to offer. So you have to. You have no other choice, right?
Absolutely. I really, really, really love that. That's such a key piece of advice. So thank you so much for sharing that, Michael. And I hope everyone at home took that in, wrote it down, because it's so key, something that I remind myself of every day. So very key. And in closing, I just have one or two last questions. I'm gonna ask.
Sure.
You shared a lot, and thank you so much again for sharing so much about the tools that we can do, about getting your body moving, about how we can reach out to our family members, and also professional help as well to sort of help us through these times. But I want to ask you, if you could describe yourself in one word, what would that one word be?
Good question. Oh, before I answer that, I want to tell you the second piece
Oh,
of
right.
advice I want to say. So the second piece of advice, the reason why I was struggling is because I recently just heard it and I think it's perfect. So have you heard of the lotus flower?
Yes,
Yes.
definitely.
Okay. Yeah. It's a very symbolic in Eastern teachings, especially. And I don't know if you knew this. Someone recently explained to me, and it like blew my mind. But the lotus flower, it's a beautiful flower that grows on the top of the water. But first, it has to implant its seed at the very bottom and grow through the mud in order to get to the water. And it can't grow without the mud. So a lot of times, when we're dealt with a challenge, we just want to like get rid of the mud as fast as we can, and then everything's gonna be okay. But if we don't have the mud, we don't have the flower. So the advice that this specific person gave me was no mud, no lotus. I thought that was so powerful. Like, oh my gosh, like it gives me goosebumps, because you know what? You can't get rid of it most times. You got to go through it. But once you do, something beautiful will come out of it.
Beautiful. Such beautiful words of advice, such a beautiful story, a beautiful analogy, and so telling, so telling. So again, thank you for sharing that piece of
You're
advice.
welcome. Okay, so the word to describe me.
Yes.
You know what? I have a bracelet that says this one word, and that is resilient. Like I am. Like, there's no other way to say it. Like, you know, I've come this far. I continue to work through it. I continue to come out better and stronger, even though, disclaimer, like I said before, I don't always feel like I'm going to get through it, or I don't know how. Eventually you do. And so I am resilient.
That is beautiful and such a telling word as well. I've known you for the while that I've known you, and I can say that definitely, Michael, you are a resilient soul for sure. Very
Oh,
resilient.
thank you. Thank you.
So, thank you again, Michael, for coming and sharing those words of advice. Thank you for the stories that you shared. Thank you for giving us such practical tips on what we can do to sort of help us through these difficult times. And thank you all at home for watching, of course. Thank you for tuning in to the Speak Real podcast. Again, join us here every Tuesday or Monday, every Monday and Tuesday for another Speak Real podcast where we come and we interview the youth speakers, sharing their stories about the struggles that they've gone through and what things that they've done to overcome those struggles. So again, I want to thank you to everyone who has made these podcasts and all of our online programming possible. Think people like TD Bank Group, so many others, but all the contributors that have made our podcast and all of our online program possible, we thank you so much, because this is allowing us to get those important conversations started and allowing us to reach those people and impact people using our voices. So thank you again, and thanks for tuning in.